Gnome blessings, my fellow Gnomians. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown, but for me, it's heavy lies the gnome hat. And I say that with a full heart because the weight I carry right now is something I'm so grateful for. It's strange, beautiful, weirdly complex, unexpected, but it's also a weight. Not in a bad way, more like kind of a weight that reminds you that something matters. So, this video, this gnome talk, it's not a complaint, it's a breakdown. It's another behind the scenes reflection of these few months, what it's been like. It's the incredible moments, the hard ones. So, I want to take you into a deep dive of the heart of it all because what we're building here, it's real and I want you to see it. So I'm hoping that by the time you finish this, that you feel more connected, inspired, and excited about what we're building here at the Church of Gnome. So let's do another look back to the beginning of the church. It officially launched in January of 2024. But for over a year, it was super slow. It took until late March 25 to reach our first 1,000 members. 14 months of barely any engagement, a few orders here and there, mostly me just chipping away at the website, writing, creating, hoping. And then something shifted. I reached this point where I felt like I really have to go all in. If I don't go all in now, I never will. So I did it. I threw everything into it. Time, energy, money, faith. I started running ads. I didn't know if anyone would even care, but I had to try. And then suddenly people started showing up. And by the end of April, thousands of people were joining. The ads were working. The word was spreading. The movement took on a life of its own. And now, just a few months later, we've passed 16,000 members. And we have people in every state, over 40 countries. I've started having friends tell me that sometimes they've met strangers who have mentioned the Church of Gnome. And I think it's safe to say that at this point, millions of people have probably heard about us. And how the heck do I process that? And the thing that hits me the hardest, it's not really the numbers, it's the stories. We now have thousands of ordained ministers, and in the past few months alone, I don't even know how many weddings have been performed under the Church of Gnome banner. I've been seeing the photos people are sharing and heard from couples, people saying their vows, and gnome hats officiants referencing our principles. And I realize that this is no longer just something I created. It's now a part of people's real lives, part of their stories, their milestones, their memories. That's super humbling. It's powerful. It's sacred. And with that, I've realized such a deep sense of responsibility to make sure that the church remains something people can be proud to be part of, to make sure it's built on love, not ego, joy, not chaos. A lot of you don't know this, but before any of this, my dream was always music. I've gotten to open for some of my favorite bands. I've written music with members of Megadeth, 6 Feet Under, Devil Driver, and more. I got to go to Hollywood and meet with the owner of one of the biggest metal labels. I've even gotten to perform at a UFO festival and be part of a documentary series that was about making contact with aliens, since that's what a lot of my music was about. But then, I paused. I had to look at the path that I was about to take and realize that if I just took one more step and go all in on music, I would miss too much time with my kids. All those early years would be gone because I'd be away from home more than anything. And as much as that dream meant to me, it wasn't worth the trade. So I shelved it. I went full on into operations, business, logistics, the stable path, climbed the corporate ladder. I've helped scale companies. I worked behind the scenes making systems that, keep things running for places like Funko. And now somehow that skill set, the same boring corporate one I've resented, is helping me build something that feels more like a calling than anything I've done before. back in April when everything took off, I saw a window. The ads were working, the numbers were sustainable. I was excited, energized, and for the first time, I felt like I could make this actually like my career, that I could finally support my family doing something I love and not be away from home a lot. So I made a decision. I told my employer that I'm going to leave at the end of this summer. It was scary, felt right. And then May happened. Seemingly out of nowhere, the ads tanked. The same strategy that had been bringing in thousands of people was suddenly costing me more money than what it was making. So I went from hopeful to panic overnight. Already had put in my notice at work, and now I was staring at a financial free fall. The stress throughout April was unreal. I've never experienced anxiety like that before. Nights lying awake, running numbers in my head, days of wondering why I just imploded my family's financial stability to talk about gnomes on the internet. But I didn't give up. I started working with experienced marketers, people who understand that world better than I do. And you've probably started seeing some of these new commercials, these ridiculous, weird, and funny ones. And that's part of this shift. That's part of this rebuild. And slowly things are starting to stabilize again. Not yet to the comfortable April levels, but there are at least now more days that we break even or have positive days than days that go into the negative. And through all that, the Facebook group, that's, been both the biggest blessing and at times the biggest source of exhaustion. So I'll start with, 95% of what goes on in our Facebook group is epic. The memes, the wedding stories, the questions, the handmade gnomes, the deep reflections. I'm scrolling through it all day and I see the real joy, the connection, the community. And then there's the other 5%. It's tough. There have been days where I've felt like I'm going completely crazy trying to keep the group balanced. We take down a post, people are furious. We leave a post up, people are furious. We get messages accusing us of censorship or inaction, sometimes both on the exact same post. And the thing is, I don't want to censor people. I believe in freedom of expression. I want people to be able to share their thoughts, even if I don't agree with them. But social media, it's kind of like a public square that's soaked in gasoline. Something that would be a mild disagreement face to face becomes a wildfire online, and it's not always just about the opinion, it's about how it's said and what sets it off. And sometimes the mods, Paul, myself, and others will spend days and days discussing one post just to figure out the right move, because I don't take it lightly, especially when it comes to like taking something down. But, whenever I get overwhelmed, I just have to scroll a couple more times. And then all the weirdness, the people helping each other, the ones who've found this place at the right moment in their life, those posts pop up. And I remember why this matters. And with that too, there's something I didn't expect, and that is the people that are actually rooting for me to fail. I've had strangers send me messages saying they despise me because I don't ban every single person who posts an AI generated gnome image of themselves. Some people have built entirely like imaginary narratives in their heads about who I am or what I'm doing with the church. I've received a death threat recently, but that person's email was so unhinged and all over the place that all I can do is kind of shake my head. It's bizarre, kind of disturbing, but also, I guess, part of the deal. When you create something that lives in that in-between space between humor and sincerity, tradition, rebellion, some people just don't know what to do with it, but that won't stop me. And, something that most people don't see is actually the operational behind the scenes. And right now, it's just my wife and I. We're printing the certificates, packing the orders, cutting and ironing gnome hat emblems every single day. And that alone takes hours. And that's why things like these Gnome Talk episodes have fallen behind. Not because I don't care, but because It literally is about 60 to 80 hours a week just to keep things afloat with the church while still managing my day job and kids. So I've been really trying to break everything down, looking at every single bottleneck. Can I do this better, faster? Can I automate it? Can I outsource it sustainably and ethically? Because I've worked at companies that have ignored these little things and it's crushed them, and I've worked at ones that handled it right and then they thrived. And, since the start of it all, our shirts and sweatshirts have been done through a print on demand facility. And now I'm seeing if I can set up something similar with like the gnome hats. So I'm not spending hours every week making them by hand. And a nice little side note, many people have asked for black gnome hats or pink gnome hats. So I have been testing and sampling different dyes. So hopefully in the next month or two, I can roll out some new gnome hat options. And for the missionary gnomes, I've been trying to look into if there's somehow, some way I can make them biodegradable while still keeping them affordable, because I want this movement to be gentle on the earth too. So these all seem like there may be small steps on the outside, but I feel like these are those little things that can keep us alive and growing for years to come. And, part of lasting is taking time off. And this last weekend, I took my family out to the Oregon coast. It was the first day off I've had from the Church of Gnome since March. And something about being in a different place, stepping away from my endless email inbox, away from the printing, away from the nonstop rhythm, it really helped me breathe. And in that stillness, it's really hit me even harder that this is just the beginning. Like, yes, the Church of Gnome technically started in 2024, but everything you see today, the growth, the energy, the movement, it all really just started a few months ago. And the path ahead, it's just so full of possibility. And so I want to go through with you guys some more of like where I see this going, not in a far off dream, but my plans, the work, the foundation we're trying to lay. And one of the most common messages I get is, can I start a branch of the Church of Gnome in my town? And I love it. I love that so many of you want to bring this into your communities, into the real world. And I see a future where we have local chapters popping up all over the world, and little Nomian circles where people can meet in person, build relationships, give back, and be part of something meaningful. But the thing is, I've also been learning how complicated that is, how risky it is. I've talked with a lawyer and looked at how other organizations have done it. And once I approve a local chapter, that gives me a ton of liability. What if someone misrepresents the church? What if someone uses that role I gave them for something unethical? What if someone gets hurt? All these little things. So yes, I'm planning on that to be a thing, but I want to do it right, with clear ethical guidelines, training, a structure that protects everyone, the community, the leaders, the spirit of what we're building here. Because if we're going to grow into the real world, we need to do it ethically, sustainably, and with the same love and weirdness that started it all in the first place. And, another dream that's starting to feel real is, maybe some sort of annual Church of Gnome gathering, a place where we can all come together, not just online, but in person. I don't know, a festival or a retreat, a weekend of laughter, rituals, workshops, music, gnome hats, who knows? And I really do think that at some point we can make that happen. Something, maybe it's a between a spiritual gathering and a weird Renaissance fair, a place, where the profound and the absurd can dance together in the forest. A great gnome pilgrimage, if you will. And, the first one, it would probably end up being in the Pacific Northwest since that's where I'm at. But, maybe it rotates every year. But the core of it would really just be that same real human connection, real memories, real magic. And, I'm sure as you can tell that I've always had a love for strange theatrical things. And what better way to share the Church of Gnome than through Renaissance fairs and local festivals and oddity conventions, things like that. So I'm thinking of ways to make it possible for members to host official Church of Gnome booths at events across the country, places where, we can hand out materials, share the principles, sell some of the gnome hats and merch, and welcome curious wanderers into our strange gnome world. But again, I have to make sure I do it right. I want to make, templates, training kind of standards so that if anyone's representing the church, it's done with like clarity and heart, and it's done safely, ethically. And so I want the impact to be real, So, like from the beginning, one of my hopes has been that the Church of Gnome could become a platform for doing actual good in the world, not just an online group. And it's things like organizing community cleanups, partnering with, I don't know, things like mental health nonprofits, children's hospitals, hosting fundraisers for causes that we believe in, creating, some gnome-led kindness campaigns. There's so many options, or supporting environmental efforts like tree plantings. I want our joy to mean something. I want the laughter we share to ripple outward into acts of service, acts of care, of love. And we're getting closer and closer as the advertising costs balance back out. And as a strong foundation is laid, I want these sort of things to be a key thing people think of when they hear the name Church of Gnome. Yes, of course, I want people to hear that name and get a laugh at just how absolutely absurd all this is. But I also want this to be something where we set a standard for other groups to try to achieve. I want people to know that the Church of Gnome is actually making a difference in the real world. And, a question I get a lot from people is, how can I help? And I love that because as much as I try to keep up with everything, the church is bigger than me now. We're already at a point where it is so much for my wife and I to be doing this alone. So once I have things balanced and financially stable, I want to get moving full speed on the charitable side of things and create volunteer opportunities across the country. And at the end of the day, this whole thing, the Church of Gnome, it was all built on a paradox. It's funny, but it's not fully a joke. It's profound, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's spiritual, but it welcomes skeptics and seekers alike. And I believe that's what makes this so powerful, because we're in a world that sometimes feels like it's full of noise, fear, control, shame, and we're creating a space where people can just breathe, a place where weirdness is holy, a place where joy is sacred. The world can be heavy, but here together, we're making a space that can be light. And now, as we move forward into new phases, bigger dreams, deeper connections, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing. Thank you for laughing, crying, caring, showing up. Whatever brought you here, whether it was some of the memes, a moment of curiosity, a heartbreak, a dream, I'm so stoked that you guys are here and that so many of you are here. So let's build something lasting, loving, something gnome grown. So, let's end it there, guys. Gnome blessings. And yes, I did just get gnome blessings tattooed on the sides of my hands yesterday. So that, when I make these gnome blessings or gnome hat symbol at the beginning and ends of the episodes, Oh, it's right there. I'm all in on this, dudes. I'm unemployable now with these tattoos, so let's get it.